take it back what you have said.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another edition of New Music from Old Friends. Today, our friend Dee up in Missouri is going to give us a review of Stomping Ground, which is the new album by Dion. This was released on November 19th of 2021 on KTBA Records. Dion did a 2020 album titled Blues with Friends, where he had he recorded with a lot of different guest artists, and this is basically a follow-up to that, a sequel to that, if you will. This is kind of the same thing, and this features a roster of superstar guest artists. Among them are Bruce Springsteen, Eric Clapton, Peter Frampton, and several others. And just before I turn it over to Dee, just for my couple listens to this album, I just wanted to point out that this definitely is not your father's Dion album. This is not a throwback to Dion and the Belmonts. It's not a revisit of Abraham Martin and John or anything like this. This is Dion getting his blues on. This is an album that fits in well if you have a collection of Joe Bonamassa albums, Stevie Ray Vaughan albums, and things like that. Just a pretty serious blues rock. That's what this is. This is not a doo-wop album or anything like that. But anyway, I just wanted to get that up front so we can tell you right up front that what this is. But anyway, Dee's been listening to this album, and he's here to tell us all about it. Take it away, Big D.
Thank you, Big Scott, for the nice walk-up intro there. So, Dion DiMucci, a little background before I get right into the Stomping Ground LP for those who maybe were born after 1970 and not familiar with his career. Dion, he was the teen idol from the late 50s and the early 60s. Hits like Teenager in Love, which came out in March 1969, Run Around Sue, The Wanderer. He was elected to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1989. He's been a solo artist. He's worked in different genres. Yes, he did break through as with Dion and the Belmonts. How did he start? Singing on the street corner with his friends in the Bronx neighborhood that he's still proud to say he's a New Yorker that grew up in the Bronx. And all the doo-wop songs that he and the Belmonts recorded, that's what they did. They, were imitating some of the sounds that they heard in their neighborhood. And Dion, there's just, he's got such a lengthy musical career. I mean, how many people born in 1939 can still rock like he does? And Scott alluded to, this is not the Dion of the 50s or early 60s. That's true. He has had a lengthy career that has evolved from doo-wop, rock, folk, Christian music, and now to blues rock, which he's worked in that venue for several years now. On this LP, Stomping Ground, the second one that Dion's recorded with guest artists, this has a who's who of classic rock, in fact, Hall of Fame lineup of Eric Clapton, Bruce Springsteen, Mark Knopfler, Peter Frampton, Joe Bonamassa. Then there's guest vocalist Patty Scialfa, Rickie Lee Jones, Billy Gibbons of ZZ Top fame, Sonny Landreth, and Boz Scaggs. So that's quite a lineup there, and I believe they're either friends of Dion or they just love to contribute their musical skills to this album. And I believe most of the ones Dion sent them either a demo or the finished track, and they added their guitar solos afterwards. And what I love about this particular album, it is dead set blues rock. Dion is 82 years old. True, he can't hit the high notes, but his voice is just, it's there. It's there in every one of these songs. He covers, typical blues topics like loss of love, regret, but there's also a kick one. In fact, the song Stomping Ground features Billy Gibbons on it, and it's typical. You can tell it's Billy Gibbons on guitar, and there's a nice horn back up in there. The songs with Peter Frampton and Joe Bonamassa, they add their musical contribution. You can certainly tell when Joe Bonamassa lays down his licks, and the same with Frampton, is they don't overdo it. And I think there may have been a tendency, you get these masters of guitar with Dion, but I think they showed a lot of restraint on here. Yeah, they did kick it, and it's really just good, solid blues. And what's remarkable, there's a lot of remarkable things about this record, is the clarity of it. I think it's high recording value. And let me just go over some of the highlights. I think on this particular record is is Dancing Girl. That's with Mark Knopfler. You can tell Mark Knopfler's particular guitar style on this. And, here is Dion, 82 years old. Unlike some of his contemporary classic rock acts that have released records in the last few years, there's no bitterness. There's no lecturing. There's just kind of sage feelings through his. A lot of heart and a lot of soul comes through this album. He's definitely a New Yorker through and through, although he's lived in Florida for a few years now. Some of the other two songs that I like on here is Cryin' Shame and Hey Diddle Diddle. All these compositions on Stomping Ground were co-written with Dion and his partner, Mike Aquilina. There is one cover that they do, though, which was interesting, and it's a song that Jimi Hendrix recorded with Red House. And on this song, he's accompanied by Keb Mo. For people who know who Keb Mo is, he's kind of a folk blues artist that has been around for a while, and it's a different take. It's almost like a more of acoustic interpretation of Red House. And if you like Jimi Hendrix Red House, this is a nice, easy groove, and it gives it a different interpretation of that Hendrix classic. Joe Bonamassa, this album was recorded with his Keep the Blues Alive label. He's appeared on earlier Dion records. Dion, he's really a treasure for the musical community. I mean, anybody that was around when they were a young teenager in 1958, 59, and to see that he's still out there, and he is producing, very solid blues rock contributions. I mean, this is not a fade out, and we're very fortunate and lucky that he's still around. I can't come up with a better description. I came across one description of Dion, that he's become the godfather of rock and roll due to longevity, and due that he's not fading out, and his musical contributions are worthwhile and they're solid. As Bruce Springsteen, who's on this record too, he said that Dion was the bridge between Frank Sinatra and rock and roll. Well, whether you agree with that or not, I would say that for anybody who's a blues rock fan, they will find this a very comfortable groove to listen to. Very comfortable. And several of the tunes, as I said, rock out, definitely Stomping Ground. And the Frampton one is probably, There Was a Time. which was of course, another blues mine. The blues area that gets mined a lot is, regret in love and all that. So without going through every song, the summary here is he's just added another gift to his musical legacy and career. I mean, here's a guy who was on touring with the bus tour with Buddy Holly, JP, and Richie Valens in 1959. So to go from there, to go from the early successes that he was 22 years old when he signed as a solo artist, to go with Columbia Records at, $500,000. That's, ungodly money, even for them. And, he found he wasn't happy. He's had some struggles with drugs and over the years. And then he made his way back. He wanted to go back with Laurie Records, which he had recorded on earlier in his career. And they said, fine, but we want you to record this song. And it was Abraham, Martin, and John, which was written by another songwriter. I did not know that. I had always thought that Dion had written that song, but the song rose to number 4 in the charts, and it was a rebirth for his career. And he worked in the folk genre for a few years, got back to that. And then he recorded several Christian music gospel albums. And he's, touched on every genre, but he's definitely found his home putting on his blue suede shoes, to borrow a early Elvis reference. And that's where he's at. And I think what he's doing is just fantastic. We're lucky to have him around. And I will, purchase this recording and listen to it again and again.
Thanks, Dee, for that review. I appreciate it. And I'm sure our listeners do too. I just wanted to point out that I was surprised when I was getting ready to record this video with you that Dion has never actually gone away. I mean, he's been around. It's like it's not a thing where he got hot for a little while and then disappeared and came back with Abraham, Martin, and John, and disappeared and then came back and blah blah blah. He's been pretty prolific since the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s. I noticed there was one period there for about 7 years at the end of the 1990s and into the early 2000s where he didn't do anything. I don't know if there was something personal going on there or not, but other than that, it's like a 7-year stretch between albums that he recorded. Other than that, his discography, pretty much since the early 60s, he has something new out every 2 or 3 years. He's never stopped, and that surprised me. But yeah, this was like this one was his 3rd album since 2007. So he's stayed busy. But yeah, through the 90s it didn't do much, but the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, he was active. The other thing I wanted to say that, as you pointed out, one of the requirements for being called a New Yorker now is that you do have to spend some winters in your retirement years in Florida. If you live in New York but you don't ever spend chunks of time in Florida, you can't be called a real New Yorker. It's because this is where I live in Broward County, Florida. Sometimes some people refer to it as New York South, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But anyway, thanks for that review. And yeah, check it out, everybody. And if you haven't been keeping up with Dion, and if you're a fan of, like I said, if you're a fan of just get down heavy blues rock, I think you'd be surprised by listening to this, because this is not doo-wop. This is not 50s rock and roll. This is not 60s rock and roll. This is 90s style, 2000 style, 2010 style blues rock at its core, and it's just all over this album. And it was a pleasant surprise for me when I heard it. I wasn't expecting it. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We've made you a little smarter about Dion and other things music. And one of these days I'll learn how to talk effectively without stumbling over my words. Join us next Tuesday for another roundtable. Join us next Friday for another review of some sort or the other. And Bob, D, and I will see you soon. So long.